sport, photography, art, culture, humanitarian aids, etc., etc. A whole elaborate form of creativity. So we wanted to kind of use aspects of that in our product which we designed today. So obviously the musician creates a song. Judging by this brief, we all know that musicians have a problem, or the music industry has a problem with the MP3 file and how it can be easily copied and then disseminated across many other people. What we've tried to do is create an object which we kind of talked about it as being as creative as possible. And what that means is these objects are using augmented reality. So if you'd like to take a knuckle duster, seeing as you haven't been here, and if you can go and stand in front of, they are still delicate.
Well, I've always wanted to
yeah.
Lady Gaga.
Yeah. So
you step back a little bit. Keep on stepping.
I can't see.
No.
So with this, but what we intended to do isn't actually use the augmented signature. So what you use with the augmentation signature, we've made our own Lady Gaga silhouette. But actually what we intended to do was not use something which is easily replicatable, i.e. with just photocopying. What we wanted to do was actually use the shape, because we believe that if you can augment the shape, what you're achieving is you're creating a lockable key which can lock down something. So this is harder to replicate than an MP3 file. So if we can have something which will copy with augmentation files the shape rather than the shape of this, we can create software which can house music capabilities within it. So when you're in front of the camera, it unlocks the song, it unlocks visuals. Yeah, kind of getting a little bit lost of what we've got, but you can unlock the whole diversity of different creative means. And we've got things like, if you've got a soundtrack which relates to a film, it can kind of have obvious visuals with the narrative of the song. So one of the examples that I was giving when we first started the project, if you had Johnny Cash and you had a mug or something like this mug could turn into a shotgun, it could turn into a bunch of flowers, it could turn into all sorts of visuals which reference images and words in the song. So you're kind of creating another aspect to the song, but it's actually a tool to unlock the digital file on the computer. And what these objects are as well is they are a key. So inside these files you could have it that they only play once, ever. So they're similar to what your idea yesterday about something that dies, explodes, or comes online once the artist is dead. Using either the ephemerality of the materials to produce your object, or using a design process within the media itself, that file can die after it's been played once, or it can be unlocked forever, or it can only be unlocked every time you use an object in front of the screen. So by doing that, you're kind of pinning down how and when you want your music played by who, and you're also kind of making it slightly harder for it to be copied because you're using a physical object to unlock it rather than an MP3 file. So this is kind of your artwork on top of your record cover, but it actually unlocks the playing of your music too. So I've missed?
I don't think so. I think the key thing that we've tried to come across, bring back throughout the whole project, is the fact that I think a little bit of the actual arts have been lost to do with music. So most people know that music is an art in itself, but as it's been moved into the digital era, and as you now scroll through lists and lists of songs on iTunes, you've lost that tangible kind of piece of art that you used to get with music. You don't get to touch music, you don't get to look through different album covers, people don't get to create as much, so artists don't get to create as much to go with their music or their album. So it makes it hard for them to tell their story. So we're hoping that maybe with the sculptures, models, products that they bring out alongside their music, this will unlock their music but also give them another way to show what that album's about. And then you can take it a step further, and it could be the augmented reality which is going to tell you more about the album. Each track could have a different figure or a different meaning. And yeah, that would be displayed using the augmented reality like that, basically. So yeah, it's just another way to get that value back in, but we want the value in the form of the kind of artistry in a way, isn't it?
And it's also, we feel like it is a design process with the actual object. It's kind of responsible design. I don't want to use the word, but it's sustainability as well, because in the fact that we're not producing something which isn't necessarily needed twice, because if you produce a piece of paper, okay, and then it gets put in the bin, if you produce something which can be used again as a ring or as a mug, at least it's got another function, so it becomes a holder of music, but it has a dual life. And kind of touching on some of those aspects of what Seth was talking about your market as well. I mean, you can have your Lady Gaga, we've taken to extremes Sigur Rós and Lady Gaga, but if you took another extreme of Bjork, her partner is Matthew Barney, he's a very famous contemporary artist. She's collaborated with him on films and sculptures. If they went vice versa and he made the sculpture which the song was tied to, then this artwork could be sold for £50,000 and that song can be owned by perhaps one person and then disseminated by a small crowd of people. Elitist as it is, you're still kind of using that monetary system in a different way and a dissemination in a different form than Lady Gaga, which could be mass-produced and disseminated to thousands of people because that's the type of audience that she deals with. Anything else? Any questions?
You talk about the multidisciplinarity or otherwise of your team.
We're very multidisciplinary. It's great. What would you like to know?
Well, just from your perspective.
Mine personally?
Your group's perspective. What happened to do with multidisciplinary working?
So you're into the product design part and helping them along the day to create an actual 3D printed cut produced. And I was the computer science part of it, which is the AR part of reality. Which makes Chris have to do the presentation that's coming up next time. And also do some of the drawing.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we did quite clearly is we asked the questions what skills were in this group of people, and because we could have created something completely fanciful and out of our league, out of our realm, and it would have just been a wish list of fanciful ideas. But what we did was we picked the ideas and skills which we knew we could work towards in a day and a half. And we've pulled in everybody's skills to produce this object, and it's been organic. It's been questions that have been asked from every member, capabilities that have been put forward, and problem solving throughout. It's completely just fluid.
I think the main place where everyone's skills came across was when we were throwing the ideas together. We've had 3 or 4 of these big sheets of paper, and as we've taken that forward, as we've taken the idea and the process forward, everyone's kind of come in with different angles, different ideas, whether it be even down to listing different types of music or introducing a different user who might interact with it in a different way, because we could have thought about it from the Lady Gaga route, but until somebody kind of comes in with a, well, what happens for the opera lover, how do we work that out, and that's the way that's pushed through. And so I think that, yeah, the main way we saw all the skills coming together was in the idea process, and then at the end we've actually ended up chopping up, and we've had model making going on here, and prototyping going on, and coding going on. So then we've kind of split off and probably done the things which we specialise in best after we'd all come together to make the idea.
Yeah. So. And reassessing that, coming together and saying this is working, what do you do? Having a look at it, stepping away from it. Yeah. But what I'm pleased with as somebody part of this team is that I think through the tangible, which is what we've been asked to achieve, we've actually potentially asked, and in some ways not perfectly, solved a lot of the issues that, if enough money was put towards this, might actually offer a solution to MP3 copying to some degree, adding an extra worth to different creative products and processes involving other artists. So the other example we get, if you had Lily Allen, who's perhaps a fashion designer as well, and she can design clothes which are incorporated with this process and the augmentation, which when they're worn by somebody unlocks the song, and also unleashes a whole visual element to the process of wearing something and buying into that artist's oeuvre.
Right.
So,
and do you think there were some quite different ways of thinking about things that maybe constructing a prototype together had some effect on? I mean, was there, not a tension exactly, but I mean, was there very different mindsets about certain aspects of it? Did that arise? Or?
I think there were in the early stages, weren't there? And when we were trying to really get our head around the initial problem, I think quite a few people went at it in different ways.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we put quite a lot on the table that we started to narrow ourselves down. When we split into the first 4 groups, we were one of the groups that were ushered to, well, we need to make sure you find an area, because we weren't really finding an area at the time. And I think that was it. I think because lots of different ideas came from lots of different avenues, people were looking at things different ways, we put a lot on the table and then kind of condensed it back down after that. So
it's very conceptual, wasn't it? I mean, I think we were investigating it conceptually quite broadly, and in some ways it's very fluid because we could have just gone the way that we did earlier on in some ways, but I think we spoke to Steve and actually it was almost too easy to kind of do that. And but Steve,
whereas making something physical has a different effect.
Yeah, but then actually, if we, I think, I don't know if you can let us know, but we've addressed some of the issues quite well in how this achieves a multitude of different levels in the music industry. And we, you know, this doesn't have to be rapid prototype. We could sculpt this in plasticine, and I think we would have been happy with that as well. I think the main example of the technology working successfully is here on the screen, because that's harder to kind of portray in like somebody.
So do you think that's, I'm quite interested in that, because do you think that's because you know the making compared to, would you have found the rapid prototyping harder than the, do you see what I mean? Is or not, or do you think that was, do you see what I'm saying? In the sense that because you're a mixed bag, does that mean that you felt it was obvious because you bring those skills, but
maybe it's just me, I don't know.
A couple of seconds. But in terms of the actual making that kind of cut, I wouldn't be able to design that in the kind of package. And
yeah, I think the thing with the highlights is that by having people with different specialities, it's speeded things up incredibly. I mean, someone could have had the idea, but they would have to have gone out to find somebody who could do the 3D design and the prototyping, or find somebody who could do the programming, the coding, and expect us to do it in a day and a bit as opposed to a month and a bit.
But I think actually the main thing where it's most creative, in my opinion, isn't that you can do this, it's actually the questions you can ask whilst you're doing it. So in the sense that, yeah, we've got these two examples here, but we thought, as just a question, let's try and draw it and see if it recognises it. I mean, the question that brings up, could this be incorporated into perhaps a learning method for a child who buys a song on the website? There's a picture which they have to copy, and once it's copied perfectly, it will play the song and lock it, so you're adding an element of the game to it. And by working in this group that we have, I mean, those types of questions get answered very quickly. And that's, in my mind, quite creative, because it's not simply kind of going, we know that works. It's actually, whilst we've got everybody here, should we see if we can do that as well? So it's a learning process as well, which I find really exciting. I think it does work, which, you know, it's, for me, that's quite exciting.
I'm curious.
It might not work now. We've changed the picture since then. It may work.
So I'm curious on the group dynamic. You all approach this with your individual skill sets, and you all took on your individual tasks. But did you start playing in each other's sandboxes?
I think certainly. I think when you look at the project, we've got quite a range of skills because we've got some pretty. Well, for me, it all looks to be quite intense coding. Which before this, if you'd said to me, I want to make a product with an augmented reality edge to it, it would have gone over my head, and I would have said, okay, well, we can look at whether it's viable, but we can't actually get something in front of you and show you what's going on. So therefore, having somebody with a completely different skill set where you were like, oh no, that'll be fine, it's just plug and play. I didn't know it was just plug and play before that. So I think that I've learned a lot about that. I've learned a lot about what can be done quite easily within that coding. I assumed that would be well above my level to be done in 2 days. So in that sense, I've learned a lot about it, but I wasn't going to sit down and try and do that because we have 2 days to put it together. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm not saying it's bad that I didn't try it, but next time I'll know that I can maybe give it a go because it's easier than I thought it was. That's on my behalf.
one example I give is I was trying to crop and change an image in Photoshop, and Chris said, "Oh, there's a better way of doing this. I'll do this way instead." And I learned from him that that's a faster way of doing that. So it was more his area than my area.
So you were starting to go across, and you could see, as you pointed out, in the next project that you would take on, now your toolbox is expanded.
Yeah, I would know more.
Maybe empathetically instead of analytically.
Yeah.
So I think if it would have been a 3 or 4 day project, would have got involved much more in each other's areas, but because we were trying to get some output in a fixed time, we, on necessity, although there has been some cross-fertilisation, we sort of did our own bit and pulled it together.
Good.
I'm conscious that we ought to move on,
right.
So everybody gets a fair crack of the whip, and then we get time to set up set at 5. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wow.